Today, I want to talk about why you need to have an open mind in these times that we're living in. And you need to be fluid and go with higher consciousness and your intuition and your innate abilities that you were born with that will tap you into higher intelligence, where you can solve problems, have an amazing journey, an adventure. One of the reasons I love all this is because, as you know, I've told you, I had these 3 UFOs hovering over my head in 1966 that were perfect saucers with little domes on top. They flew in from the Atlantic Ocean and hovered over my head for a few minutes before they went back out to sea, just to let me know that they're there. Now, I don't know where they were from, but it highly motivated me to try to figure it out. So I joined the airlines very quickly after that. And I started flying all over the place with these pilots that I wanted to interview. So I would go up to the cockpit and spend some time up there having conversations. And many times I'd ask them if they'd ever seen any UFOs, and they would freeze up. They didn't want to talk about it. They were told not to talk about it. The government didn't want them to talk about it. They didn't even want them to report them if they saw them, I found out. And there were a lot of sightings in the 60s. I wrote about it in my book. It's the first chapter, my UFO Experience. I wrote the book Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant because I approached my job like an investigative reporter. Anytime I felt like there was someone worth talking to that could give me some good information, something juicy, I made it a point to try to pry it out of them. And I learned a lot that way. I even considered doing the news, but it was too negative for me, even though it was an option back then. But I'm happy that I stayed with my flying career because it gave me a chance to meet people from all over the world, be in the right place at the right time, to have something really miraculous happen every now and then with the right connection. I never really was scared out of my mind, ever. You know, it was actually a very safe form of, it still is, probably the safest form of transportation. And so I felt very safe up in the friendly skies. But I used to love to ask people questions, and they would give me information that was very, very interesting. Another thing I used to hear back then from the pilots, many of them had been World War II pilots and flown around Europe and, you know, missions during World War II. They told me about the Foo Fighters that they used to see in Europe that were basically UFOs. Nobody could, you know, explain what they were, but they were flying around back then, Foo Fighters. And they also clued me in on how there is actually a shadow government. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, it means that there are really people behind the scenes that are pulling the strings. And we just don't realize it. We think the president has all this power and decision making, but there are other people. And I heard that back in the 60s. Now, what are we going through today? We're uncovering a lot of truth that has been hidden for eons of time about planet Earth, who's in charge, what it's all about. And a lot of really interesting stuff is coming out now. But if you have an open mind, you can think on these things and come up with your own conclusions and realize that maybe things just aren't what they appear to be. Another time I had a steward I worked with who had worked for a charter airline before he came with my airline, and we were flying together. And he told me when he worked for the charter, he flew a trip into Area 51. And I said, oh, that's interesting. What was that like? He said, well, as we were approaching the landing, they told us to pull down the window shades and not peek. So he said to me, of course I had to peek. I had to see what was out there after we landed. I said, well, what did you see? And he said, absolutely nothing. Everything's underground. That was pretty interesting. But, you know, there's a lot of secrets out there. That's why I wrote the book, Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant, because I wanted to share with people some of the secrets I learned about metaphysics, spirituality, manifesting. As soon as I started flying, I met a man that taught me how to manifest, and that put me on the path. For the rest of my life, I've been studying manifesting, spiritual healing, metaphysics. I've dug deeply into different mystery schools and teachings in order to get the answers for myself. That's why I do these videos. I want to share it with people. I want you to know that you have amazing abilities when you learn how to unlock it and find the key to your supernatural powers, your abilities. And you can find inner peace once you start to work with it, because you'll realize there's always a solution.